and I was basically working two jobs for 2 years. Early mornings, late nights, weekends on real estate. I'd sprinkle in a little real estate during the day too. Don't tell don't tell the old
Don't
company
tell the
now.
boss, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, essentially, I was basically working two jobs to get to that goal of being free from the W-2.
Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastriani, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. All right, welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. I am your host, Bob Mastriani, and today I have with me Joe Sullivan. Joe is a husband, father, believer, coach, and entrepreneur who is passionate about helping others and changing communities for the better. Joe spent 12 years in operations for a facility services company, and he has recently transitioned to a full-time multifamily investor. Joe brings years of experience working with Fortune 500 companies into his real estate investing career. In 2018, he started investing in duplexes in Kansas City, where he started his real estate journey. Shortly after, he joined the Jake and Gino community and made the leap into multifamily. He's a member of the MIH Mastermind and GoBundance, which has helped push him to scale his business to 1,400 plus units owned and self-managed in the Midwest. Joe's also a multifamily coach for the Jake and Gino community, which is where he started his multifamily education. He's passionate about giving back to his community that helped him and get his start in multifamily investing. Joe found his passion for multifamily after his coach and now partner encouraged him to push past his limiting beliefs. His why is to leave a legacy for generations to come in his family and to allow him freedom for his family. Joe resides in Kansas City with his wife, Tanya, and their 4 daughters. Joe, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Thanks for the intro. I'm stoked to be here. Let's do it.
Excellent. So I love in your intro, in your bio, that you mention your why about creating legacy wealth for your family for generations to come, and then also giving back to others. I see that in your coaching, but just in sort of the things that you do. So I love that you make sure to include that as part of sort of who you are in your bio. So very cool. If you can sort of give us a little bit of a background on Joe, about sort of what makes you tick and how you moved from that Fortune 500 company into multifamily real estate, and then the steps that it took for you to become a full-time real estate investor.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bob. Yeah. So I've been a full-time investor now for almost 2 years. Kind of hard to believe, but yeah, it goes fast. It feels like it was yesterday when I left my W-2. But I was there for 12 years. Great company to work for. Felt a bit handcuffed and limited on where I could go. So started investing, as you mentioned earlier, on my own and in smaller properties. And realized I was crazy and doing all the wrong things. I was mowing the lawns, even, just things you should never do. So I was bound and determined I was going to continue and make real estate work. So I went and got educated, joined the Jake and Gino group, like you said, and that's really where kind of the magic happened, so to speak. I was able to meet all of my partners now. And a lot of investors, and really, really help with that learning curve. Really expedite my learning. So, just got in the right group with the right people, and now fast forward 3 years later from joining, just kind of off the races, I guess, so to speak.
Great. So I recall, actually, I believe you spoke on stage at Jake and Gino's Multifamily Mastery 4. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had that opportunity. That was super scary. I'm an introvert, so doing even podcasts like this has to get me out of my comfort zone, and definitely speaking on stage in front of that many people is scary and but exciting, and it's actually some of my goals this year is to put myself out there more on shows like this.
Okay. So I think at that time you had just made the switch over to full-time real estate investor. I know it was a bit of a whirlwind for you, right? You make that decision, and then next thing you know, you're standing in front of 1,000 people telling them your story. So that probably a pretty cool experience, though, right?
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, my wife was there. She, videotaped it, and something I'll never forget. Gino and Jake, they've gave me the platform to do it, and I never would have thought I would have been there, but it really is the power of putting yourself in the right room, and frankly, working your tail off too. So that's the other side of it that a lot of people don't talk about is, I was basically working two jobs for 2 years. Night,
Mhm.
early mornings, late nights, weekends on real estate. I'd sprinkle in a little real estate during the day too. Don't tell don't tell the old
Don't
company
tell the
now.
boss, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, essentially, I was basically working two jobs to get to that goal of being free from the W-2.
So I see in your bio that you're now a part owner of over 1,400 units. That's a very significant amount of real estate. I know that's mostly in the Midwest. What was the point where, I guess you were duplexes and investing in smaller multifamily opportunities? What was the point where you said, okay, I'm now finally able to leave my job, able to do this full time? Do you remember around where that number was for unit count?
Oh, how many units? It was getting close to 1,000. It wasn't. I think it was probably 700 or 800 units. I don't remember exactly, but it was just shy of 1,000. And that's the 1,400. That's a mix of syndications and joint ventures, and some I own on my own. So it's not all me by myself. I mean, frankly, being able to do it that fast, it's just the power of your network,
Yeah.
essentially, leaning into your strengths and leveraging others' strengths.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know the team you're a part of, very big team, great group of individuals, and everyone seems to have different strengths where you're all working together and bringing different things to the table. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned my bio. That was one of my biggest limiting belief when I started was, not having enough capital to really do this, and was able to crush it after a couple deals, and I was always able to find deals and operate deals because I was doing it on my own, but finding partners that can help with the capital was the biggest limiting belief coming from a middle class family where there wasn't a lot of money around, and people talked about saving money a lot, and didn't talk about investing as much, things like that. So definitely a mindset shift.
So when we talk about partnerships, and we talk about creating a team where everyone brings different values to the table, I know that they refer to you as Joey DTS because of your ability to work direct to seller and sort of help build those relationships in the process of finding opportunities. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what that process looks like for you, and maybe is that something that comes natural for you, or how did you figure out that you had that talent?
Yeah, I didn't feel like it came natural. So it felt a little uncomfortable. But I'm local I live in Kansas City, as you mentioned. And most of the deals I invest in are in my backyard, essentially. So I was at the time, it was just really me trying to figure out how I can add value to people that I wanted to work with. So I leaned into it, and really just I had a coach at the time, and that he now is one of my partners, and he really encouraged me to stop anything other than trying to find deals and trying to network locally. So if it wasn't for him, I would have been pounding my head against the wall trying to do everything instead of to try to be an important piece of a team.
Mm,
But as far as the whole direct to seller and off market deals, the process, it's I mean we'd have to have like an hour uh, hour call to to dive into all the details. But the one thing you did say that is really critical is relationships. So with multifamily, like larger properties, it's not like buying a single family or even a duplex. I mean, you really have to build a relationship with the seller. So you got to get to the seller, and then you got to figure out a way to connect to them, and have that personal touch. So always try to get face to face if possible, and then that's when you can negotiate, and there's just you can understand the seller's story and what they're trying to accomplish by selling, and they can understand your story that you're a qualified buyer. In my case, I'm local, and can close. Have the ability to close. So that's the biggest takeaway. There's a lot of technicalities to how to find the deals, how to get in contact with the sellers, but the biggest thing is to try to build a relationship.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and you and I spoke about this a little bit before we began. First of all, I love that you said that it didn't come natural to you in the beginning, or you didn't feel like it came natural to you in the beginning, because one of the things that I'm learning on my journey, right, is that sometimes it's about getting outside of your comfort zone, and sometimes it's about honing skills that are related to things that may not necessarily feel natural, and that's where you find your niche. But I'd mentioned to you this before we jumped on the on the Zoom here, before we hit record, I guess. And prior in sort of in a prior life, I was an acquisitions manager. I worked about 3 years. I worked for a wholesaler where I did I did acquisitions and dispositions that was related to single family wholesaling. And then I also worked for a little over a year with an investor who did 50 plus fix and flips per year. And I was in acquisitions for him also, where I went out, met people in person, looked at their property, and did a lot of that face-to-face relationship building, learning about why the seller wants to sell or needs to sell. And I think there are probably some similarities and also some differences, right? When I'm looking at a home, oftentimes there's a different emotional attachment to it in a single family. It's maybe, we did a lot of probate, right? So maybe it's related to, a relative who passed away, and there's sentimental value about that, or it's just, I don't want to even say just, but it's someone's home, and, maybe they're losing it, or maybe they can't afford to maintain it, or for whatever reason they need to sell it. So there's a different emotion, I think, that you're touching on versus larger multifamily. Now you're talking about maybe someone's business for 20 or 30 years. And so maybe you could talk just a little bit about some of the things that you see that may be a little bit different between the two.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think a single family is probably more emotional, because it's their home. Like you said, it's not just a house; it's their home. With multifamily, I mean, I can give you some examples. Like the deal I've worked with a seller on, he built it. Okay, so obviously he takes a lot of pride. He took a lot of pride in the property. His family manages it, so it's it was a source of income for his family for several years. He built it. His daughter managed it. That was her salary essentially. And he had a dream about his next project, so he wanted to sell it. He wanted to 1031 exchange into his next project. So more, it was more of an income source to him, like you said, as a business. But there's a lot of pride, like personal pride, professional pride, in that situation. So knowing that and understanding, what his goals were, really helped, get the deal done. So, some sellers are selling, another seller was selling because it's his retirement plan. He bought the property 12 years ago, and now he's gonna.
Now it's time, right?
It's time for him to. I think he was in his 80s, if I remember correctly, and it was time for him to be done working, and this was his. He was going to take the money and he was going to flip it into a more passive income stream. So, and those are the types of opportunities when you can start negotiating seller financing, or seller carryback, those types of things. So that's why it's important to build the relationship. So so you understand and know, what they're trying to accomplish with the sale.
So the other thing that I found very interesting when I worked in that role, and I'm sure you're seeing this too in your relationship building, that it's in most cases it's not just about the money. It's not just about the purchase price. Oftentimes there is another value to be added. There's another place where you can add value to the seller that isn't just related to the number that's on the check. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the one I was referring to earlier, the gentleman who built the property was in a smaller town, and it's always good to use examples. And he wanted to ensure that the residents were going to be taken care of.
Mm,
Like he wanted, I mean, he hadn't raised rents on them, and he just wanted to understand what our intentions were, and wanted to make sure that we were good landlords, and he didn't want to sell it to a slumlord, frankly, and somebody
yeah.
was going to let the property deteriorate because he built it and he knew a lot of people who lived there personally, and so that was really important to him to hear the story and the plan with the property.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, if someone's newer to looking to become an investor, it seems like a lot of your role has to do with a little bit of what we refer to as boots on the ground, right? You're the person who's in the market. You drive by properties, look at them. You can actually meet the sellers face to face. Are there any tips of how someone can sort of get started on that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest tip is to get educated. That's what I did. Sometimes you have to pay to get educated. There's a lot of free resources out there as well. So don't get me wrong, bigger pockets, but yeah, get educated, get in the right room, get in the right group. You don't want to try to, I mean, you can, but I wouldn't advise trying to do this on your own. It's a pretty daunting task. Real estate isn't a get rich quick thing, but it'll take you a heck of a lot longer if you're trying to do it on your own. So yeah, you get educated and get in the right mastermind or educational group.
Okay, great. Well, that's great info. Great info.
Yeah.
So I want to transition over. This is the Healthy Investor Podcast, and I like to talk about sort of healthy habits, healthy routines, and do you have any healthy habits or routines that play a value in your life, and then how do they affect your business? Do you feel like there's a carryover between the personal life and the business life with those?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, my daily habits are pretty rigid. I get up relatively pretty early. Um, I read and journal every morning and do a little bit of meditation kind of mixed in there. My version of meditating and praying. So that's really important to me to get that time in by myself before I have 4 kids, as you mentioned earlier, before they start waking up and um, they start interfering with my plans. So that's why I like to get up early. Yeah, try to exercise. Try to do something active every day. Lately, I've been running more. I've been running some 5Ks. So, and I have a goal to complete a Spartan race this year. So,
Oh, very
um,
nice.
yeah. So when I'm active, I definitely notice more energy. It's just you feel better, you feel healthier, more energy. I'm just more on top of my game when I'm active. So for the previous let's call it 2 years, I had a kind of a knee ailment, and I had so last year I did physical therapy on it, and now I'm able to run again. So I definitely have noticed a big difference in just my energy levels. When I'm exercising on some level.
Great. Well, I love that you start your day off with the what I refer to as sort of the mental health and mindset habits and routines first, right? And the reading, meditation, journaling, it helps to set your day off right on the right foot. You get your mind right, and then everything else falls into place a little bit better. As far as your running is concerned, I recall, I guess it wasn't all that long ago, you posted that you completed a 5K, right? You completed a race, and it was a bit of a victory for you because, as you mentioned, it's been a while. You had an injury, you weren't able to get out to running. So, has that been your main type of exercise, mostly running?
Yeah, mostly running. I used to, play sports. It'd be kind of nice to get back into like basketball or something like that. But since I've had the knee, I had a goal to do 2 5Ks in the Spartan race this year. So I've knocked the 2 5Ks out. Now I just got to find the Spartan race. So I'm pretty laser focused on accomplishing this before I do anything else.
That's great. So, have you started to put your team together for your Spartan race?
Yeah, the group I'm a part of, you mentioned before, Go Abundance actually has a Spartan team.
Oh,
So I'm joining the Spartan team. So they're all over the country, but
sure.
they do like weekly calls, and they hold each other accountable for the different different training levels.
All right. Have you identified the race yet?
I have not.
Okay.
There's some conflicts I had with the family stuff, so a couple that I wanted to go to couldn't make because
Okay.
they're none of them are in town, none of them in Kansas City, so got to travel somewhere.
So wherever you go, it's going to be a bit of a travel then.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So you have to plan it. You have to make sure you
Yep.
know where you're going, when you're going, who you're taking with you. I can
That's right.
understand.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't ventured into Spartan racing just yet. I did a Tough Mudder, I guess, 2 years ago. Yeah, I think 2 years ago I did a Tough Mudder, and that was definitely a really exhilarating experience. It was fun. Tough Mudder there's a team aspect to Tough Mudder also, in that some of the obstacles you probably couldn't get over without the person in front of you reaching back and lending a hand, or the person behind you giving you a boost. So there's a little bit of that, but it's not the same. I mean, you really do sign up as an individual. Although when I did it with two friends. So the three of us did the race together. I think the event was about 10 miles and 20 obstacles. So,
Oh wow. Yeah. I'll have to look into that. It sounds fun, really, frankly.
yeah, well, yeah, and wear clothes that you don't mind getting muddy, because it is. The only thing I probably wouldn't do again, and I've said this to several people, there were two events where, depending on how you move, you may get a little bit of an electric shock.
Oh, whoa, okay.
And I'll probably skip those. You can skip any obstacle that you'd like. I probably would skip those if I did it again in the future. Just, I'm getting closer to 50. We have heart history in my family. I'll just make
Yeah.
sure not to get electrocuted.
Yeah, no need to put yourself in that spot. Yeah.
No, but it was a lot of fun, and it's a
Yeah.
great environment. Well, good luck with your Spartan racing. I'm going to
Yeah.
follow along
Yeah.
to see how you make out with that.
Yep. For sure.
Cool. So I want to move over to the next segment, where we ask the same questions of every guest. And so for you, what is your definition, Joe, of success?
Yeah, you mentioned that before the call, I think for me it changes probably at different stages of my life, and different aspects of my life, like health, fitness versus business. So for me, it's like right now, it's setting up my family for success. Like my focus is them, and the assets I'm purchasing, and even my health, as we talked about earlier, is to live a very very long life, and be able to see them be successful. So the combination of purchasing assets that will last longer than me, and can be passed down to generations, and then and me being around for a very long time. So that's where I'm at right now, um, with my definition of success.
I love that. I love that. I love that you're spending a lot of time thinking about, how your family would be taken care of, and far beyond you. And that's really, really cool to see and to hear. I have one child, I have a daughter, she's going to be 12 years old. And it's a similar mindset. It's a similar thought process for me too, of, I've told this story before, and I don't know if I've told it on the podcast, but the first time I met Gino Barbaro in person, we spoke about legacy wealth. And he said to me something that I'll always remember. because he said legacy wealth is so important. However, legacy skills are even more important because you need to teach them how to handle the legacy wealth, or else it all goes away in one generation. So I've been focused on that a bit of, what messages are we relaying that my daughter hears intentionally or non-intentionally, right? Because they see and hear everything that you do, whether you intend on it or not. So pretty cool to hear you say that that's important to your definition of success, because that does align similarly to some of the things that we're talking about in my home. So very cool.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. Educate your kids for sure. Like that's my oldest is 11 all the way down to 2. So starting that process now, like, and they're starting, I get a lot of eye rolls, but you know, try to teach them what I'm doing. So when they're ready, they can do it, they can 10x what I've done. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal.
yeah. Yeah.
So question number 2, for someone who's newer to investing or even learning to focus on their goals and their path to success, do you have a good book recommendation you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, one of my favorite books over the last couple of years is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. Really, really helps, especially when you're scaling or trying to acquire large multifamily. Don't try to figure out how to do something. Just try to find out who can help you do those things. So it really hits home when you need a team.
Mhm.
So that's one of my favorites. I've read it a few times now.
So you've encouraged me now, because Who Not How is the most recommended book on this podcast.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I read
Awesome.
it once, and it's probably been over a year, and it's probably a good time I should read it again, because that was a really good book and it made a bit of an impact, but I think it could probably make more of an impact. So it's probably a good idea for me to pick it up and read it again. One of the things that I liked about Who Not How, and one of the things that often comes to mind as soon as I hear of that book, is that I'm often trying to look for how can I create value for others. So Who Not How is sort of a two-way street of value add, right? So in one aspect, it's who can add the value to fill where you need assistance or where you may not be as strong. And then the other side of that is, where am I strong? Where do I provide value to be someone else's who? So
Mm.
that second part there is really the one that has stuck with me the most about the book. So I have to go back to it again and see if it has quite the same impact on me.
Yeah, I like that. How can you be someone too? Yeah.
Mm, yeah. So before we get to the final question, I want to thank you for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing some of your knowledge and a bit about your journey. How can we support you, and how can people reach out and touch base with you?
You can reach me at joe@joedts.com, and just follow me on social media, Facebook, um, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So
All right,
about
great.
yeah.
And then final question, if you can think back with me to a young Joe around the ages 10 to 12 years old, knowing what you've learned so far on your journey, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to that young Joe or any pre-teenage child to help guide them towards success?
Yeah. I mean, first thing I would tell them is to make sure they have fun while they're a kid. To be a kid. I tell my 11-year-old that all the time. So that'd be something. Just lean into being a kid and have fun. And then next thing it would be don't go to college. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, don't feel forced to go to college. 4-year degrees aren't for everybody, and now they're just so darn expensive that I would definitely encourage my old self to think twice about that. And there's a lot of alternative options now that make a lot of sense with how ridiculously expensive school is. And then last would be find a mentor. Like, if you're wanting to get into business or real estate, find a mentor. That'd be the other piece, and add value to them. Find a mentor and add value to them.
Yeah. I love that you've mentioned mentors and coaches. several times throughout this conversation. And, when we look at athletes, when we look at, when we're athletes ourselves, right? Maybe we play sports when we're young. We often look to coaches. And then when it comes to business and growing your business or even growing as a person, I think that oftentimes we don't think about coaches and mentors, but I think that's they play such an important role. And if it's someone who can help you to either get your mind straight or to figure out what the next step could be, or to help you find other people who you can communicate with or something like that. I think that's such an important thing. And I'm glad that you've mentioned it a couple of times, because that's such a strong value add there.
Yeah. Yeah. And add value to them. That's the other, if you need help, you need to pour into them first.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for coming on the Healthy Investor Podcast, Joe. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are listening, make sure you check him out. Joe Sullivan. He's on all the social medias, and Joe at joeydts.com. Thanks so much, Joe. Go out there and make it a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor Podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.